Hogwarts Legacy has now been out almost a month, and we have some big news I've seen circulating in the community. There have been tons of talk regarding Hogwarts Legacy DLC, and at first Warner Bros. Saying they are not currently working on any DLC. I'm here to tell you that while they may not explicitly have DLC ready or are currently working on it, I'm sure there is a team somewhere formulating the plan and getting ready to stage DLC plans after the older gen console launches. Now I'm going to convince you this is going to happen, even though it just seems like speculation at this point, and maybe some examples of what DLCs that we can see, because they will happen. This no DLC talk was initially due to them stating they had no current plans for DLC and that Hogwarts Legacy had only launched on half of its SKUs, as PlayStation and Xbox players still need to wait until April 4th, followed up shortly by the Switch in June. A better way to frame Alan's, the first developer's response to the DLC question, is to remember that we've only launched on half our SKUs so far. He then goes on to say there are people out there who still don't have a game in their hands, and we don't want to shortchange those folks. The reason this is so important is because when this is stated initially that there are no plans for DLC, they then open up the door to DLC with the following response about making sure other consoles get the games in their hands first. This was out of a need to set the record straight to clarify the no current DLC plans comment. This was definitely said out of a need of necessity to set the record straight to clarify the no current DLC plans comment after it was said. Let's face it, even if nothing is currently in the works, clarifying this way was intentional to keep the door open for DLC if they decide to pursue it. Also, this project was fairly quiet and hush-hush until the spoilers provided by them, mostly directly for Hogwarts Legacy, were released. So what is to say they wouldn't keep DLC plans under wraps as well? The whole point is to not over-promise and under-deliver, but quite the opposite. Why would they announce DLC plans 6 months or a year ahead of time that would ruin the hype for when the actual DLC does get announced before launch? The Hogwarts Legacy team is dedicated to making sure the story, environment, and things in Hogwarts Legacy are not only entertaining, but accurate to the lore of the Harry Potter franchise. This is why, although it has been done, we don't see people riding around on dragons, Dumbledore walking around before he was even born, and so on. Although that would be cool, that doesn't match the lore. The team wants to give people the full Wizarding World experience to the best of their ability, but how could they possibly do that without including things so important to the franchise, like Quidditch, for example, or Magic Law Enforcement Patrol, or even consequences for using curses? I mean, they are unforgivable, right? But yet you can cast the unforgivable curses, like giving candy out of a vein with an Xbox in it. These are examples of some things that the team must have thought about at one point to make sure the lore and environment best matches the entire world they have spent so much time building, right? Well, I think they did think about it, and it may just exist. If not now, but soon. Do we think adding Quidditch gear, police uniforms, etc. to the game was just to be funny? I think in a way it was for lore and customizability, but also a slight hint. And here's the main reason why. This is a game we all very much love, but we as consumers don't look at the aspect of Hogwarts Legacy for what it is, part of a business. Do you think we would have Hogwarts Legacy to play if it wasn't going to make Warner Brothers money? Absolutely not. Now let's take into consideration the fact that in 2 weeks, Hogwarts Legacy sold literally 12 million copies. In 2 weeks. That is $816 million in gross sales. Do we think it cost that much to actually make the game? Not even close. The profits over the following year will be insane and off the charts. After all, half of the people overall haven't even bought it yet because of being on an older gen system, if not way more. For all is said and done, they could be looking at like $2.5 to $4 billion in sales at least. Warner Bros. May not be money hungry per se, even though most businesses are. That's why they are businesses. But wouldn't they be stupid for not simply marking up their profits 50% by selling 2 $15 DLCs or a $30 DLC that they would literally work on for like 2% of the time that they actually spent on the entire game itself? 2% of the work for over doubling your actual profits? Yeah, that would be dumb for them not to do. Now that hopefully I've convinced you that there obviously will 100% be DLC for the game once older gen consoles get the game themselves, I'm going to show you the leaks that look to be around the corner. And if I have convinced you that there's going to be DLC, make sure to scroll down and like the video. Let's start with the first DLC option, Quidditch. Quidditch could be considered somewhat of a complicated game and mechanic, and granted it was stated long ago that this would not be a thing, there were rumors of Quidditch files existing prior to 2017 before they had abandoned the project entirely. Now this could have been for a multitude of reasons, the main one being they needed to focus on the core gameplay components and store to actually complete the game in a reasonable fashion. If they began working on a million different things at once without enough personnel, this game would have crashed and burned. Also, the Quidditch arena already exists with flying mechanics that could be tweaked when inside the Quidditch arena to allow players to play as it would really just require flying and interacting with objects and other NPC mechanics to make this fully functional. Like I mentioned, I believe this was dropped early into the process due to time constraints and focusing on the bigger picture, but now they have nothing but time and are in no incredible rush. When it comes down to the bottom line, executives at Warner Bros. Look at this game and go, if we invest $10 million into building out a DLC for Quidditch and some other items, would people buy it? If even only 10% of the people that have the game now, which is still way less than the total number of players that would own the game within the next year, if only 10% of them buy this DLC if it were, let's say, $20, which most people would consider buying, they would probably make $20 to $30 million extra at least if only 3% of the game owners buy the DLC. There are enough hardcore Harry Potter fans that this makes total sense, and even if they only estimate 3% of game owners to buy the DLC, I guarantee you way more people would. A future DLC could also offer plans to include things like potentially the Triwizard Cup. The Triwizard Cup happens only once every 5 years, and in Hogwarts Legacy you are 5th year. There's no indication that this happened recently, so it could be a possibility of something that they could add. It could be introduced as part of a major storyline for a DLC offering. There's no telling where they could go with that actual story. There are many other areas of the map that I believe could be easily expanded on to create big open areas to place further DLC content. There's enough room even on the current map to place DLC content. Warner Bros. Did a great job and made a ton of money with this release. To think they wouldn't make a DLC for such a successful game, I think just doesn't make sense. And one more thing, the game literally just came out, but everyone is pressing for DLC because people say there is now nothing to do. Even if the story took 25 hours to complete and the whole game 100% at 70 hours, that is still a great game. That is still a great game the way it is and the way the story actually played out. Almost everyone loves this game, and to have a game that is single player, story based, and doesn't have an infinite gameplay loop at the end, so what? For the first time in a while, I paid $70 for a game and got a solid experience with a large community, and it was super fun. And maybe in 6 months or so, I'll come back and replay the whole entire thing again from scratch. It was very fun, and even more fun that mods continue to be made for the game and makes the game even more exciting. If you agree with me that DLC will end up in the game at some point, let me know your thoughts in the comments, especially with what you think they could potentially add for DLC. Guys, make sure to subscribe on the left to stay up with the latest Hogwarts Legacy and gaming news in general, and check out one of these videos on the right as well.